It began not with the sound of jets or sirens, but with silence. On a humid morning in early 2023, screens across Tehran's energy ministry suddenly went black. Security cameras froze, passwords failed, and within minutes, the city's southern grid flickered out. At the same time, nearly 1,500 kilometers away, digital forensics teams in Tel Aviv were quietly isolating rogue signals on defense servers. No missiles were launched, no bullets fired. Yet both nations knew the war had already begun. Before we go further, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Because by the time this video ends, you'll realize how close the world came to a digital disaster no one saw coming. Like, share, and subscribe. Because this story, the shadow war between Mossad and Iran's cyber operatives, is one that rewrote modern espionage. For decades, Mossad and Iran's Revolutionary Guard have fought in the shadows. Assassinations, sabotage, and proxy battles stretching from Beirut to Baghdad. But as both sides adapted to a world wired by data, they discovered a new battlefield: the Internet itself. The stakes were no longer about seizing land, but controlling information, power grids, and nuclear secrets. The story begins years earlier, around 2010, with the Stuxnet operation, the world's first true cyber weapon. The virus, planted deep inside Iran's Natanz nuclear facility, caused uranium centrifuges to malfunction and spin out of control, crippling Tehran's enrichment program. It was a digital ghost that acted like a guided missile capable of precise destruction without a single explosion. Officially, no country claimed responsibility, but intelligence circles traced the fingerprints to a joint Israeli-American operation, directed by Israel's Cyber Intelligence Division and its allies. That single act redefined espionage. Iran, once confident in its physical security, found itself vulnerable from within. Its most secretive military programs compromised not by spies in the corridors, but by lines of code written thousands of miles away. Over the following decade, Mossad's role in cyber espionage deepened. Unlike traditional spycraft, where agents crossed borders with fake passports, the new operatives carried laptops instead of pistols. Their job: infiltrate Iran's defense systems, communication channels, and research facilities using malware, digital implants, and remote access tools. Cyber analysts from within the region say that Mossad, working through its elite intelligence arm Unit 8200, transformed from a traditional spy agency into a hybrid of artificial intelligence research lab and global surveillance network. Private cybersecurity firms in Europe and Asia, many run by former intelligence officers, quietly collaborated under commercial covers. Through them, Israel gained unprecedented digital reach, the ability to infiltrate not just Iran's nuclear assets, but even the mobile devices of scientists and officials linked to the Revolutionary Guard. In response, Iran began building its own cyber army. The IRGC Cyber Command, operating under Tehran's defense ministry, recruited programmers, software engineers, and hackers trained in both espionage and digital warfare. They called themselves the Guardians of the Network, a phrase that symbolized their mission to defend Iran's sovereignty in cyberspace. Soon, Iranian hackers began launching counterstrikes, targeting Israeli banks, energy firms, and government portals. What began as isolated retaliations grew into full-fledged campaigns. One of the earliest major incidents came in 2020, when an Iranian cyber unit successfully breached several Israeli water facilities. By manipulating chemical levels in the water flow system, the attackers aimed to poison the supply chain. A silent, lethal warning. The attempt was foiled, but the message was clear. Israel's infrastructure was no longer untouchable. Within weeks, Mossad's cyber branch retaliated with a massive counter-operation that crippled the computer systems of Iran's Shahid Rajai port near Bandar Abbas, halting shipping operations for days. Regional analysts at the time described this as a digital tit-for-tat. But behind the scenes, both sides were escalating their capabilities at a pace the world had never seen. Israel developed AI-based intrusion systems capable of predicting Iranian attack patterns before they occurred. Iran, meanwhile, expanded its hacker groups, such as APT-34 and Charming Kitten, targeting Israeli allies, oil companies, and Western contractors connected to the Israeli defense industry. By 2022, what had begun as limited cyber duels evolved into a sustained shadow war. Entire national infrastructures became targets. Flights were grounded in Iran after airport systems crashed. Weeks later, Israeli hospitals reported strange outages that digital forensics later traced to Iranian malware. Neither side publicly admitted blame, but both knew exactly who was behind it. The battlefield had changed. The enemy wasn't across the border. It was in the cables, satellites, and servers. What made this war so unique was its invisibility. Cyber weapons don't appear on radar. They don't leave missile trails or satellite images. They hide in updates, in emails, in USB drives left in parking lots. This made the conflict not only untraceable but deniable. Each side could strike without taking formal responsibility, avoiding direct military escalation. An investigative report from a Middle Eastern security think tank described how Mossad had begun deploying digital honey traps, fake identities, social media personas, and job offers to lure Iranian scientists into revealing access credentials. Some were tricked into downloading infected files disguised as academic research. Those files quietly mapped entire Iranian networks from the inside. At the same time, Tehran was conducting mirror operations. Iranian cyber units had infiltrated several Israeli defense contractors through phishing and social engineering. Once inside, they extracted classified blueprints of military systems and communication protocols. The data was then encrypted and transmitted through proxy networks based in Asia and Eastern Europe, masking its origin. Both sides understood that cyber warfare had erased traditional borders. Iran no longer needed to send weapons across Iraq or Syria to reach Israel, and Israel didn't need to risk agents on the ground to dismantle Iran's defenses. Every attack, every digital strike, was a message. We can reach you anywhere, anytime. Yet, beneath the layers of code and encryption, this was more than a war of machines. It was a psychological game. Both Mossad and the IRGC sought to sow fear, uncertainty, and mistrust. Leaks appeared on dark web forums claiming to expose sensitive information about government officials on both sides. Some of these leaks were genuine. Others were elaborate disinformation planted to provoke paranoia. The stakes grew even higher when private companies, from airlines to banks, became collateral damage. Civilian life was no longer separate from military targets. Every connected device was a potential entry point. What truly terrified regional observers was the speed at which artificial intelligence was becoming a weapon in itself. Israeli defense analysts hinted that AI-assisted tools were already being used to simulate enemy behavior, test weaknesses, and launch autonomous counter-hacks. Iranian programmers, not far behind, had begun experimenting with predictive coding, programs that could identify patterns in Israeli cyber activity and anticipate attacks before they happened. It was no longer a matter of who had the better army, but who could think faster than the other. By the end of 2023, both nations had expanded their cyber fronts beyond the Middle East. Mossad operatives, disguised as cybersecurity consultants, were detected across Europe and Southeast Asia. mapping data centers believed to be used by Iran's intelligence partners. Meanwhile, Iranian cyber teams launched phishing campaigns targeting Israeli embassies, journalists, and defense analysts worldwide. A sign that Tehran wanted to expose not just Israel's systems, but its image. Each side accused the other of breaking international norms, but in truth, both had redefined the limits of espionage. The once covert battles of the Cold War had evolved into something far more complex. A war fought in silence, across invisible lines, and this was only the beginning. While the world still debated missiles and sanctions, Mossad was fighting an invisible war, not in the skies, but in the circuitry of servers. In an underground facility near Herzliya, a handful of Israel's brightest digital minds worked under code names. Their mission: to create a new generation of espionage tools, capable of striking enemies thousands of miles away without a trace. This wasn't just hacking. It was precision digital warfare. The heart of Israel's cyber power pulsed inside Unit 8200, a branch so secretive that even within Israel's intelligence ecosystem, few understood its full capabilities. Formally, it was part of the Israeli Defense Forces Intelligence Directorate. Unofficially, it was the beating brain of Mossad's technological ambitions. Here, mathematicians, linguists, and software engineers worked together to monitor global networks, intercept communications, and exploit vulnerabilities deep inside enemy infrastructure. For decades, Israel's intelligence doctrine had been built on early detection, a belief that survival depended on knowing the enemy before the enemy knew itself. In the digital era, Unit 8200 turned that philosophy into code. Using data mining algorithms and AI models, the unit could sift through millions of intercepted transmissions in seconds. Phone calls, satellite feeds, even encrypted chat apps, searching for patterns that indicated Iranian activity. One of Mossad's most effective innovations was what insiders called Project Orion. It wasn't a single program, but a collection of interconnected malware tools designed to infiltrate isolated networks, air-gapped systems like those inside Iranian nuclear facilities that weren't connected to the internet. The technology used supply chain infiltration, placing compromised hardware or software into legitimate shipments, heading toward Iranian contractors. Once inside, it created a digital bridge between Mossad's remote servers and Tehran's most secure labs. This is how cyber espionage replaced the need for physical infiltration. Instead of recruiting a spy to smuggle files, Mossad could turn an Iranian engineer's own laptop into an informant. Analysts across the region believe that this system, tested and refined after the early success of the Stuxnet worm, gave Israel a head start in global cyber operations. But it also blurred moral boundaries. Some cybersecurity researchers later discovered traces of Israeli origin code in non-Iranian systems, including private companies in Europe and Asia. Mossad's digital reach, once justified as national defense, had grown into a vast web of surveillance that operated beyond borders. By 2021, Israel had established itself as one of the top 3 cyber powers in the world. Mossad, working hand-in-hand with defense tech startups, began using artificial intelligence to automate espionage. AI models could simulate Iranian network behavior, detect weak points, and even launch preemptive attacks when certain risk patterns appeared. This made their operations not only faster, but frighteningly autonomous. A Mossad cyber operative no longer had to manually break into a system. He could program an algorithm that did it for him, learning as it went. But with that power came danger. AI-driven espionage had one fatal flaw. It could act without full human oversight. Several Middle Eastern cybersecurity experts warned that automated strikes could lead to accidental escalations, a small digital skirmish spiraling into a full-blown war. And in 2022, that almost happened. In April that year, a mysterious malware attack shut down parts of Iran's national railway network. Train schedules vanished from digital boards, phone lines went dead, and passengers were told to call Supreme Leader Khamenei for information. It was a direct digital insult, mocking, precise, and deeply personal. Tehran blamed Mossad. Israel, as always, remained silent. But forensic analysts confirmed that the malware shared code architecture with tools previously linked to Israeli cyber units. In retaliation, Iranian hackers launched a counterstrike against Israeli public infrastructure, targeting water systems and logistics databases. Neither attack caused mass casualties, but both sent a clear message: the war was alive and escalating. To understand Mossad's cyber power, one must look beyond its tools, to the ecosystem that fuels it. Israel's government had long encouraged intelligence veterans to transition into the private sector, creating a gray zone where espionage and entrepreneurship blurred. Former Unit 8200 operatives went on to found companies that now supply cybersecurity software worldwide, from Silicon Valley to Singapore. Behind closed doors, many of these companies maintained discreet communication channels with the intelligence community. They provided a cover for global operations and, at times, a way to test experimental tools. Some experts have called this privatized espionage, a system that allows state-backed cyber activity to hide under corporate branding. This integration of intelligence and industry made Mossad's network virtually untouchable. Even when exposed, the operations were difficult to trace directly back to the agency. Every line of code, every data packet, could be routed through multiple jurisdictions, Europe, Africa, or Asia, masking the true origin of the attack. Yet, not all of Mossad's cyber activity was offensive. Much of it was about control, surveillance, prediction, and information warfare. Leaked intelligence from regional analysts suggests that Mossad operated several mirror networks that monitored Iranian digital traffic in real time. These systems used advanced keyword recognition and metadata scanning to predict Iranian counter-operations. This was the new face of espionage, not waiting for attacks, but anticipating them. Still, the digital battlefield wasn't one-sided. Iranian cyber units had grown sharper, more coordinated, and deeply motivated by revenge. In several instances, Tehran's hackers managed to expose Israeli-linked companies and data centers. A 2023 leak revealed the personal details of thousands of Israeli defense contractors, a move widely believed to be a psychological strike orchestrated by Iran's Black Shadow group. Mossad's response was swift and silent. Within weeks, several Iranian-linked media websites and data hubs mysteriously crashed. Cyber experts in the region noted that the pattern of attack bore Mossad's signature, a blend of surgical precision and total deniability. But perhaps the most concerning development was the weaponization of disinformation. Both sides began flooding online networks with fabricated news, fake leaks, and manipulated documents designed to confuse or discredit the other. Mossad's media operations were sophisticated, capable of using fake identities and AI-generated personas to plant stories in international outlets. Iran's teams countered by amplifying anti-Israel narratives through proxy accounts and digital propaganda campaigns. The result was chaos. Truth itself became a casualty. A cyber warfare specialist based in Istanbul described it best. This isn't about stealing secrets anymore. It's about rewriting reality faster than the other side can correct it. This was the psychological dimension of the war, not about who won each attack, but about who controlled the narrative afterward. Despite its vast cyber success, Mossad faced growing criticism, even within Israel. Some retired intelligence officials warned that the agency's digital expansion had become too aggressive, risking diplomatic fallout. Others argued that cyber operations had outpaced ethical boundaries. International watchdogs and journalists began to uncover Israeli-linked spyware used not just against adversaries, but against journalists, activists, and even allies. The revelation that the Pegasus spyware, developed by an Israeli firm with government ties, had been used by multiple regimes to target dissidents sparked outrage worldwide. Although Mossad officially denied involvement, the incident revealed a deeper truth. Israel's cyber ecosystem had grown so intertwined with global intelligence that drawing a clear line between state and private operations was nearly impossible. And while Mossad celebrated its technological dominance, the question lingered: had it gone too far? In the pursuit of total digital control, was Israel building the same surveillance web it once feared? By mid-2023, both Mossad and Iran's cyber units had reached a stalemate. Each knew the other's playbook, each mirrored the other's moves. What was once a series of covert strikes had become an unending digital standoff, one capable of reshaping geopolitics with a single keystroke. The physical wars of the Middle East were fading, replaced by lines of code that could cripple nations. The next stage of this conflict wouldn't be fought underground or in the sky. It would unfold in data centers, social media platforms, and server farms across the world. A silent war that never sleeps. If Mossad's cyber arsenal represented precision and stealth, Iran's response embodied resilience and adaptation. The Islamic Republic had long been on the receiving end of Western and Israeli covert actions, assassinations, sabotage, economic isolation. But over the past decade, Tehran learned to transform its vulnerability into capability. By 2020, it had built one of the most aggressive and decentralized cyber warfare programs in the Middle East. The roots of Iran's digital counterstrike reach back to 2010, when the Stuxnet worm devastated its Natanz uranium enrichment facility. For Iranian officials, that moment wasn't just a technical defeat. It was a humiliation. The malware had physically destroyed centrifuges while masquerading as routine system updates. It was the first publicly known cyber weapon to cause real-world damage, and it exposed Iran's lack of preparedness in a field it hadn't even realized was a battlefield. That attack became the turning point. Within months, Tehran began quietly assembling its own cyber command, drawing from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, and elite units of the Ministry of Intelligence. Unlike Mossad, which relied on advanced hardware and Western partnerships, Iran's cyber program thrived on improvisation, creativity, and ideological motivation. It was built not on luxury resources, but on necessity. By the mid-2010s, Iranian cyber operatives had organized into specialized clusters, unofficially called cyber brigades. These weren't isolated hackers. They were structured teams spread across universities, tech hubs, and even civilian research centers, providing both cover and manpower. Among them, several groups gained global notoriety. APT-33, Elfin, focused on aerospace and energy sectors, often striking foreign contractors involved with Gulf states. APT-35, Charming Kitten, masters of phishing and social engineering, known for targeting journalists, diplomats, and nuclear researchers. APT-42, linked to more sophisticated espionage against Western policy institutions. Black Shadow, a newer, more aggressive group targeting Israeli networks with public data leaks. These organizations operated with fluid command structures, official enough to receive strategic guidance, but decentralized enough to deny government responsibility. It was Iran's answer to Mossad's deniability, a cyber army hidden in plain sight. While Mossad sought surgical precision, Iran played the long game. Its first goal wasn't destruction, it was infiltration. Cyber analysts across the Middle East noticed a shift in tactics after 2017. Iranian hackers stopped focusing on one-off defacements or propaganda and began embedding themselves inside systems for months before launching attacks. Their targets weren't limited to military or intelligence networks. They infiltrated telecom firms, universities, logistics companies, even travel databases, anywhere that could provide data trails on Israeli or Western operatives. Every hacked database was a puzzle piece in a wider picture. This silent intelligence gathering allowed Tehran to map out Mossad-A's foreign operations more effectively than ever before. According to regional analysts, Iranian cyber units had identified multiple false companies and safe-house networks in Europe that had ties to Israeli operatives. It wasn't that Mossad had grown weaker, it was that Iran had grown smarter. The Iranian doctrine of cyber warfare rested on three principles. Deterrence through visibility. Make Mossad and its allies know that Iran could strike back. Anywhere, anytime. Psychological disruption. Create uncertainty inside enemy societies. Strategic patience. Focus on building long-term digital influence rather than instant retaliation. This approach became evident in 2021 when the group calling itself Moses Staff breached Israeli security agencies and released sensitive surveillance footage. Unlike earlier attacks that tried to hide their origins, this one was loud, public, and symbolic. The attackers posted Hebrew language videos with Quranic verses and slogans, their message clear: "We see you as you see us." Even Israeli cybersecurity firms admitted that these operations were technically sophisticated. The attackers demonstrated an understanding of internal Israeli systems that suggested years of prior surveillance. But behind the dramatic leaks was a deeper evolution. Iran had shifted from being a reactive cyber actor to a strategic competitor. While Tehran expanded its digital reach, it also invested heavily in AI-driven defense systems, designed to monitor and neutralize foreign infiltration attempts. Domestic cybersecurity firms, some linked to the Ministry of Defense, began developing local encryption tools and network firewalls modeled after global technologies. The West dismissed these efforts as symbolic until they began working. By 2022, several Israeli cyber offensives that would once have been devastating were detected and neutralized in real time. Analysts in Doha and Istanbul observed that Iran's early warning algorithms were identifying familiar Mossad signatures in malware before activation. The balance of power had shifted. Mossad could still strike first, but it could no longer strike unseen. One of Iran's most effective responses was its use of proxy cyber warfare, much like its physical strategy in the region. Just as Tehran leveraged militias and allies across the Middle East, it began using allied hacker groups in Iraq, Lebanon, and even Eastern Europe. A 2023 investigation by independent digital researchers uncovered several joint operations between Iranian cyber specialists and sympathetic non-state actors. These groups targeted not only Israeli assets, but Western infrastructure, from oil refineries to maritime logistics networks. By outsourcing attacks, Iran gained two key advantages: plausible deniability and global reach. One cybersecurity analyst described it this way: Iran learned to fight Mossad's technology with ideology. Every time a sympathetic hacker carries out an attack, Tehran gains strategic pressure without taking direct responsibility. This blurred line between government and volunteer cyber warriors mirrored Mossad's own shadow networks, but in reverse. Israel relied on privatized innovation. Iran relied on ideological decentralization. Both models worked. Both made accountability nearly impossible. Iran's digital offensive wasn't limited to hacking. Its cyber strategists understood that public perception could be weaponized. Using sophisticated social media campaigns, Tehran's teams began planting stories, amplifying narratives about Mossad's failures, and promoting disinformation aimed at dividing Israeli society. During political unrest inside Israel, thousands of automated accounts flooded local platforms with divisive messages, exaggerating internal conflicts and undermining public trust in the government. Cyber forensics later linked many of these operations to Iranian IP clusters, though attribution remained contested. This psychological layer of warfare, blending propaganda, disinformation, and selective truth, proved as effective as malware. Mossad might have controlled firewalls, but Iran learned to control emotions. Still, the cyber balance remained fragile. Every time Mossad struck, Iran responded. Every retaliation triggered another counterstrike. It was a loop of mutual escalation, but both sides understood the limits. Neither wanted an open cyber war that could cripple critical infrastructure or draw in major powers. That restraint, however, was constantly tested. In late 2023, an Iranian-linked group managed to penetrate servers belonging to a European defense consortium indirectly connected to Israel Tamar's intelligence contractors. Sensitive blueprints and emails were leaked. The hack sent shockwaves through European capitals. Not because of the data itself, but because it proved that Tehran's digital reach now extended far beyond the Middle East. Behind the scenes, European diplomats quietly warned both Israel and Iran to de-escalate their cyber standoff. But the digital front lines had already expanded beyond any one country's control. As 2024 unfolded, Iran's cyber apparatus stood as a mirror reflection of Mossad's, adaptive, layered, and ideologically charged. It had transformed from a reactive force into a proactive intelligence machine, capable of not only defending against attacks, but launching its own psychological and technological offensives with precision. A Middle Eastern security analyst summarized it best. The old wars were fought with drones and bombs. The new wars are fought with passwords and algorithms. And in that battlefield, Iran has learned to speak Mossad's language. But the real danger was yet to come. Because when two invisible forces reach digital parity, the conflict doesn't end, it evolves. And the next evolution was already taking shape. A silent race for control over artificial intelligence itself. By 2025, the Mossad-Iran cyber rivalry had grown beyond the boundaries of traditional espionage. What began as hidden strikes and counterstrikes in the digital realm had evolved into something far more sophisticated. A quiet race to control artificial intelligence in warfare. Both sides had learned from a decade of cyber dueling that brute force hacking was no longer enough. Survival now depended on prediction, automation, and the power to think faster than the enemy. For Israel, the shift toward AI wasn't just a technological upgrade, it was an existential necessity. The Mossad had seen its once unrivaled cyber dominance challenged by Iran's growing capabilities. In response, Israeli defense firms began integrating machine learning into their intelligence systems. Algorithms started to replace analysts in predicting threats, scanning terabytes of intercepted data, and identifying anomalies in network traffic faster than any human could. These systems, designed with precision and secrecy, became the silent sentinels of Israel's national defense, operating beneath layers of encryption and classified firewalls. But Iran wasn't standing still. The same nation that had been humbled by the Stuxnet virus years earlier had now built an AI-centered cyber doctrine of its own. Iranian engineers, many trained in universities that had become regional technology hubs, began developing autonomous counterintelligence systems. These programs could detect foreign intrusion attempts within seconds, trace back their origin, and even deploy self-learning decoy networks to confuse attackers. The once one-sided game had now turned into a digital chess match between two intelligence giants, each anticipating the other's next move through evolving algorithms. What made this new phase particularly dangerous was the erosion of human control. In earlier decades, intelligence officers had the final say: when to launch, when to retreat, when to strike. But AI-driven systems began to blur that line. In several incidents reported by cybersecurity researchers, automated defense protocols from both sides clashed in real time, countering and recountering in endless loops, long before any human supervisor was even alerted. It was as if the machines had begun to wage their own shadow war, indifferent to politics or diplomacy. One incident, quietly discussed among analysts in the Gulf, revealed how close this automated confrontation came to real-world disaster. In mid-2024, Israeli AI surveillance flagged what it interpreted as a massive cyber intrusion targeting critical infrastructure, a supposed Iranian offensive. In reality, it was a simulated exercise by a neutral European network. But the AI's automated response protocols nearly triggered a retaliatory strike. Human intervention came just in time. The event underscored the frightening potential of this invisible battlefield. One algorithmic miscalculation could ignite an international crisis. While both sides raced to perfect their AI arsenals, they also weaponized data. Mossad's advanced systems began harvesting vast amounts of open-source intelligence: satellite images, public records, social media metadata, and feeding it into predictive models designed to forecast Iranian strategies. Meanwhile, Tehran focused on human psychology. Its AI teams analyzed online behavior, influence patterns, and information flows to anticipate and manipulate global narratives. Iran's goal wasn't just to defend itself, but to control perception, shifting public opinion against Israel through precision-guided disinformation. As the line between cyber and cognitive warfare blurred, governments worldwide began quietly studying the Mossad-Iran conflict as a warning of the future. European and Asian intelligence agencies noted that neither side could truly win. Every time one achieved a breakthrough, the other adapted. Every system hacked was rebuilt stronger. Every database leaked was replaced with another, more secure one. It was an endless cycle. A digital Cold War fought not for territory, but for influence, deterrence, and invisibility. Yet beneath all the strategy and secrecy lay a sobering truth. Even the most advanced algorithms were still built by human hands, driven by fear, pride, and the instinct for survival. No matter how intelligent the machines became, the motives remained human. The Mossad sought security through superiority. Iran sought dignity through defiance. Both nations, in their own ways, were prisoners of the very technologies they had unleashed. By the end of 2024, cyber analysts across the Middle East described the standoff as a war that cannot be seen and cannot be ended. Intelligence veterans warned that the next great global conflict might not begin with a missile strike, but with a silent command line executed from a hidden server farm. The battlefield had no borders, no uniforms, and no rules, just algorithms, calculating, learning, and waiting. As this invisible war deepened, one question began to haunt both intelligence communities. What happens when artificial intelligence starts making moral choices? When machines are taught to defend nations, but not to understand humanity? When they can predict war before diplomats can prevent it? That question remains unanswered. But in the silence of secure data centers, beneath the hum of servers and encrypted transmissions, the future of warfare is already being written. And somewhere between Tel Aviv and Tehran, deep in that unseen frontier, the shadow war continues, silent, evolving, and unstoppable. If you've reached this far into the story, it means you understand what's at stake. The real war is no longer fought with guns, but with code. And every line written today will shape tomorrow's peace or destruction. If you found this story eye-opening, share it. Let others know that the most dangerous wars are the ones we never see.